Yes, good morning. It's Monday, the 27th of July, 2020. My name's Pete Fairbairn, and welcome back to the best on-ground weekday kickoff, where I get one of Australia's top journos on the line with me every weekday morning to talk through five of the biggest stories in the world of sport. And today, I've got Sammy Bruce from ESPN. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, Pete. A bit wet, wild and woolly here in Sydney, but otherwise, mate, fit and firing. And after another big weekend of sport.
Well, mate, it's been a huge weekend in sport. We've got this kind of glut of competition now going on with all the different sports which were postponed due to COVID, all obviously in action now at the same time, and a few different ones coming into the mix as well. But we're going to start off today with a sport, or with a competition at least, that drew to a close this morning, and that's the English Premier League. Plenty to watch on the final day there. I know when the league restarted after COVID, with Liverpool so far in front and seemingly the relegated teams looked to have been decided at that point in time, we wondered whether the season would just peter out a little bit. But there's been some fascinating storylines right till the very end. We see Aston Villa survive on the last day thanks to a draw there with West Ham United. So Bournemouth, Watford and Norwich City, the teams that go down. But I want to talk to you about the battle at the top end of the table for the European spots. There was essentially a winner-takes-all clash, a £100 million clash between Manchester United and Leicester City to ensure Champions League qualification. Of course, whoever lost that match was going to end up in the Europa League. And we've seen Manchester United get it done. It wasn't their most complete performance of the season, but we've seen them qualify for the Champions League for the first time in quite some time. And they've really been superb since the season restarted. Sammy, I wanted to ask you, just how good could this Manchester United team be? Could they even end up competing for the English Premier League title next season?
Well, how good as a Premier League fan, Pete? You've only got to wait about 6 weeks before we're back into it again. Obviously, as you said, Liverpool, such a commanding win this season to end their long drought for a title. And but you've got the resurgent Man U now under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and just what he's been able to do after so much uncertainty and turbulence there at Old Trafford, and we all know what happened with Jose before he came in. You had Louis van Gaal as well, and right back to David Moyes, the first manager after Sir Alex Ferguson there, and just a fantastic effort to bring this group together and then get them back in the Champions League. Sure, the title hopes were gone long ago, but to rally them, to get them through to the finish and deny poor old Andy Withers Foxes that spot in Europe. Well done to Man U, and there'll be a lot of happy Manchester United fans in Australia right now.
So obviously this season Liverpool ran away with the title. Manchester City, last year's winners, were in second place, but plenty to like about not only Man United but also Chelsea, with the young core of both of those squads coming through, isn't there?
Yeah, and Frank Lampard doing a great job there. We've got a great story on ESPN.com today, looking at Frank's work, how he's come in. Just back to Man U, bouncing back from that FA Cup shocker last week as well. It's just great to have these big clubs seemingly coming together at the top at the right time. And 6 weeks to wait till we all go again. How good.
How good indeed. And our thoughts are with Andy Withers, friend of the show, but we know Leicester City will do well in the Europa League next season. We move to our second story today, and the biggest news coming out of the NRL over the weekend, arguably, would be the signing of David Fifita to the Gold Coast Titans. We've been following this story closely for a number of weeks, been able to talk to the likes of Brad Walter, Adam Pengilly and Sammy Phillips, who all work in the rugby league space on this story, but confirmation came through Saturday afternoon that Fifita has signed with the Gold Coast Titans and will leave the Broncos at the end of the season. A 3-year, $3.5 million deal for David Fifita, one of the most exciting young players in the game. Will Swanson in The Australian with a really good piece around the fact that it's not as such Fifita choosing to join the Titans, but it's Fifita choosing to leave the Broncos due to the current state that they're in there. Yes, finances come into it, but in the past, this Brisbane Broncos club was a club that hung on to its best players, that people wanted to play for the Broncos. They knew if they stayed there, that was their best chance of winning premierships and playing finals and earning representative selection, let alone in contrast with the Gold Coast Titans, a club that's struggled for many, many years. Sammy, this is huge news. Does it represent possibly the lowest ebb in the Brisbane Broncos history?
Oh, it's got to be right up there, Pete. Certainly. I mean, the Broncos, they have been Queensland, really, haven't they? You know, sure, the Cowboys came in the mid-90s there and took a while to get going, and then Thurston moved down and they really started to kick on. But the Titans, this whole time, they've been in the competition now, what is it, about 12 years or so. They've just really struggled, you know, sparing finals appearances and some troubles off the field as well. And all of a sudden you've got, you know, probably the most in-demand, forward in the game who walks out on the Broncos amid just complete and utter turmoil and walks down the road to the Gold Coast. And, you know, fair play to Mal Meninga, who's been hunting this deal for a long while there and trying to, you know, oversee a bit of a cultural change there at the Titans to get this deal done. But, yeah, I think Will's right. I think it reflects, you know, more on where the Broncos are at, certainly than probably where the Titans. Sure, the Titans can get somewhere good off the back of this signature. But, the Broncos are a complete mess at the moment under Anthony Seibold. And Fifita walking out just shows he had no confidence in where the club was going.
Yeah, another heavy loss on the weekend to the Melbourne Storm. They were pretty good in the first half and seemed to have a fair bit of energy in defence, the Broncos, but Melbourne Storm's experience and X Factor running away with it in the second half. Our third story today, and the big one that we're going to spend a little bit more time on, comes from Georgina Robinson in the Sydney Morning Herald. She's looked at Brumbies outside back Tom Wright, of course, a former NRL player himself. He made the switch back to rugby union after 1 year in the NRL, just over 18 months ago now. And he's really bolted into Wallabies contention. I don't think his name was being whispered in those circles really at the start of this year, but his form since Super Rugby AU has restarted has been superb. He's got a bit of X factor. We know he has a fair degree of versatility in that back line, and can play in a number of different positions. Do you think that Tom Wright's likely to be the only Wallabies bowler we'll see in that back line? And do you think Dave Rennie's back line's starting to take a bit of shape there, Sam?
I think we're getting close, Pete. Yeah, I just think Wright at the moment is a guy who's getting better with every game he plays in the top grade. And, scored a try there at Leichhardt on Saturday night and had a hand in two more. He's got speed. He's got footwork. He's clearly got ball skills as well. He, played a lot of in the playmaking positions back at school. And what an asset to have if you have someone like that on the wing as well. Can pop in and distribute if needs be, but has also got that ability to finish and to beat a man out wide. So you're really excited by Tom Wright at the moment, and I'm sure he'll be in that Wallaby squad whenever we get to see some Test rugby, touch wood, hopefully later in the year. Look, Dave, he's got some exciting backline options. I think certainly in the halves we're going to see a Tate McDermott come through at number 9, a real strong vote of confidence from Will Genia last week on Tate's play this year. Really challenged Nick White in that position once Nick gets up and going again, having returned now from Exeter. I think you'll see stability probably at 10 and 12. I'd personally like to see Matt Tamua and James O'Connor probably 10 and 12 in that formation for me. And then 13's an intriguing one. We think Jordan Petaya's closing in on a return in Super Rugby AU, maybe for the Reds in Canberra this weekend in the blockbuster against the Brums. So, just, some exciting times of players we've actually got in the game at the moment, while also, potentially one big young kid coming over as well.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that because Georgina speaks to the latest in the Joseph Suaalii situation in that article as well. Again, kind of confirmation or reports seem to confirm that any money paid, any of these big contracts paid to Suaalii, which have been speculated, are likely to come from third parties and via the Australian Rugby Foundation. And I guess that's probably going to help satisfy some of the higher profile Wallabies and the like who might be disappointed at Rugby Australia investing a lot of money into a young untried kid. But he's not over the line yet. There's still a strong chance he ends up in rugby league, Sam.
No, and I think, he's kind of always been seen as a rugby league first kid. Now, some of the stories that came out last week and some of the reaction from rugby league I thought was pretty ordinary for them to be taking the moral high ground in this situation. I mean, rugby league clubs have been paying young kids school fees for years in both the Brisbane and Sydney GPS rugby competitions. And for Rugby Australia to come out and, boldly, inquire, sure, they've got a deal together, which looks to be mostly footed by the Australian Rugby Foundation and some private benefactors. And, then they're absolutely well within their rights to present that to him and see what he wants to do. I think Joseph, I've watched him play the last 2 years, and certainly the size that he'd put on from one year to the next was quite astounding. Very much in the easy Falau mould in the way he moves and plays the game. So, look, yeah, I'm sure he'd be a great asset. My gut is probably that he still ends up in league, and if that's what he wants to do, then good luck to him. He's a good young kid, and he's going to be exciting wherever he lands.
Move to our next story now in the AFL, and a little bit of an upset on the weekend with the Sydney Swans. We know they're a young, rebuilding team with a bit of an injury crisis, so we weren't necessarily expecting them to defeat Hawthorn, but that Hawthorn footy club in a fair degree of pain themselves at the moment. And we've seen a little bit of public back and forth between Hawthorn president Jeff Kennett and Hawthorn coach Alistair Clarkson, of course, a 4-time premiership winning coach, and they don't grow on trees. But Kennett came out during the week and basically said, yeah, I probably think with where we're at, Alistair Clarkson's contract ends in 2022, and we probably won't see him go on beyond that, to which Clarkson kind of said, oh, well, yeah, I'd be expecting to have a conversation about that at some point. I certainly don't see a finish line in sight. Hawthorn obviously now quite a few weeks without a win. They're not playing attractive football to watch. They haven't gone to the draft in recent years, so you've got a team that desperately needs to be re-energised with youth and a number of those premiership players just hanging on. Something's got to break here, Sammy. It looks like everything's building up and something might explode. Where do you see this one heading?
Well, Jeff Kennett never backwards and coming forwards, is he? He's clearly not happy with the way things are. And Clarko, we've seen him deflect a few things this year already. At the state of the game, which absolutely is not great for the AFL at the moment. But then some other picking out players on the opposition teams for staging or whatever else. It's they're struggling, and as you said, it was on a big piece for us on ESPN.com last week. Rowan Connolly actually touched on staying clear of the draft and how they tried to keep rolling along in the way that Clarko has, and maybe that's just at an end. Maybe it's either face a rebuild and back Clarko to do that, or you look for a new coach to take the club in a new direction. As you say, 4 premierships is an amazing effort, and the ability to keep that club up for so long has just been an awesome effort. But all good things must come to an end, and perhaps we're closing in on that time for Alistair Clarkson.
And of course, Sam Mitchell waiting in the wings there, Brownlow medalist, premiership captain. You'd expect he gets the job when Clarkson eventually does move on, and Clarkson would take, basically have his pick of any available job in the AFL as well. But we will see if that one continues to extrapolate and get bigger and bigger and bigger, because it may just explode. Our final story today comes from ESPN.com, and it's a review of yesterday's Yas Island UFC. Rob Whittaker, the Australian, was on the main fight of the night up against Darren Till from Liverpool. It was a cracking fight. Phil Murphy and ESPN breaking down the result, which was that Rob Whittaker won on points, unanimous decision there, and also looks at where Rob Whittaker will go next. Of course, he's only fought, that was only his 3rd fight in the last 2.5 years. There's been injuries, there's been some personal challenges that has seen him take some time away, and obviously during that time he did lose his belt to Israel Adesanya. But where does he go from here? What should his next fight be? And was this Bobby Knuckles back at his best, Sammy?
I think it's certainly a step in the right direction, Pete, as you said. Had to, he took a bit of punishment from Darren Till in that first round, a big elbow in particular, sent him crash into the canvas, but he picked his way through it from there and pretty much controlled the fight from there on out. Managed to get in and infiltrate Till's defences, and then also started to use his takedowns. And while he wasn't always successful at that, he quite often popped Till on the way out. He came through that fight really well. I'd like to see him have another fight before he gets that title rematch, touch wood, hopefully that will come to fruition. Interesting stat that I just saw before is that actually middleweight former champions were 3-11 in their following fights, having lost the belt. So that was a big win, and Rob admitted that to himself yesterday, saying that the first fight back after you've a champ's been dethroned is terrifying, was the word he used. So great to get that one out of the way. I think another fight, possibly against Jared Cannonier, We know Adesanya and Costa are fighting. That'll be Izzy's second title defence in September. So, yeah, for me, I just love to see Rob have another fight in between, win that one, and then, yeah, let's set up a blockbuster title rematch down here. Maybe back to Perth, which was meant to get the 251 earlier in the year before COVID, or even across the ditch to New Zealand now. Now, wouldn't that be something?
Well, it would certainly be something if you cover UFC for ESPN.com.au, because you would likely find yourself on a junket, whether it be to Western Australia or New Zealand. But no, I think you're right, Sam. Despite the fact that you would love to be there, it'd be great for the likes of Rob Whittaker, Israel Adesanya, even obviously Alex Volkanovski as well. We'd love to see him fight down under soon as well. So we will watch what happens there. But UFC has done a fantastic job on Yas Island to manage to get these big fights away. It's been fantastic to watch. Sammy, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and giving up a bit of your time. Do you have anything to watch in the world of sport for me to leave on?
Oh, wow, mate. I guess the final day in the cricket coming up from England. Windy's in a bit of trouble there. Look, I'd love to see them really round out what's been a pretty good series. Sure, they lost the second test, but to be able to hold on for a draw there would be great to see and great for cricket. Look for a big knock from Jason Holt. Let's hopefully see them through to a draw maybe.
Yeah, no true blue Aussie likes to see Stuart Broad performing so well and turning back the clock, but he's doing it for the second test in a row. You can't help but wonder if he'd been selected for that first test that the Windies did win, whether it might have had an impact on the performance there as well, or on the result, I should say. Sammy, thank you so much for your time. Look forward to catching up with you again very soon. You've been watching or listening to the best on ground weekday kickoff. We'll talk tomorrow.